working day, and we'll talk about what is the price of corruption risks for Kyiv's budget. I invite Shevchenko, who is an expert at the reanimation package of reforms. Also, Ivan Sikora, director of the Open Society Foundation. He is anti-corruption and budgetary policy expert. And Viktor Gleba, who is an urban development expert and an advocate of local communities in lawsuits connected to illegal construction in Kyiv. Hello, everybody. When Klitschko came to power, he promised us to deliver a ruining blow at the corruption. And of course, the Kyiv community was glad about these initiatives of Klitschko's team. And of course, the reanimation package of reforms and open society experts started to cooperate with them. We were taking part in discussions and sittings of Budget Commission and others. In August last year, our experts have provided the Klitschko team with a roadmap that would help to define specific trends and recommendations that the Kyiv authorities could use in their work. After the roadmap, the experts of the reanimation package of reforms have provided the Klitschko team with a proposal about the lowering of corruption risks in the budget sphere. After the 100 days of Klitschko's work, we organized a roundtable where we checked all the proposals and saw certain discrepancies with the position that was announced and with the work in the Kyiv City Council. And then we provided our critical remarks in articles, in additional appeals. The experts of the reanimation package of reforms initiated the recent appeal because in spite of 6 months of work in the Kyiv City Council, the Klitschko team has ignored all our proposals. As you know, there's a notion of mass overthrust or charriage in geology. This is when there's a tectonic movements are there, and the team of their promises were covered with a massive layer of clay that the Kyiv voters have not known before. When we saw the budget for 2015, we were flabbergasted because we didn't provide any proposals like this. Not about the so-called the Chernovetsky general plan of the development of Kyiv, about the detailed zoning plans, and all our proposals were ignored. So there is a question how these tectonic movements happened, and it is logical to ask whose interests the Klitschko team is protecting and when they will start to protect the interests of the community. Director of the Open Society Foundation, Ivan Sikora, will dwell in detail on this.
First of all, you know, when the new team comes to power, they have first 100 days to start reforms. If they do not make steps that they promise, then later it turns into repetition of an old song. What we see now in Kyiv, unfortunately, is the problem. It's like old song of the predecessors, because what we've seen now in the draft budget that yesterday was put to the website of Kyiv city administration. We look at the figures and we see that all the main corruption risks and corruption practices which existed before under Chernovetsky and under Popov, they are moved into this budget. Any budget, first of all, is based on revenues from land, real estate, and the contributions from the owners of trading space, from payments for commercial real estate, for parking, from advertisement. But when we are now analyzing the figures which are included into this year's budget, we see that the situation has not changed compared to the previous one. On some of the indicators, like the contributions from the owners of the small architectural firms, the situation has worsened in comparison with the previous year. What are the main problems and what should be paid attention to take all those billions from the shadow? I would like to remind you that the main slogan during the elections of Vitaly Klitschko was to combat corruption, and that was publicly also stated by Klitschko, that 50 billion grivnas is lost, that the budget of Kyiv loses 50 billion because of land corruption schemes, probably because this money is in the shadow, and something is to be done to take that money out of the shadow. What was done during more than 6 months of administration, new city administration? Unfortunately, Vitaly Klitschko's team repeats the same mantra about general master plan of Kyiv 2025, which will make citizens of Kyiv happy. But that leads to reducing the revenues from the land. But I will not talk about that in detail. My colleague will tell more about how these land corruption schemes, how now via the master plan will be legalized. Now I would like to say that, first of all, what are the problems with each one of the taxes which are so important for the budget? The biggest one is the income tax and the physical persons tax. The draft budget provides for 23 million grivnas per year. In Kyiv, according to different assessments of experts, about 3 million square meters of commercial real estate. There's more than 3 million if we take 20 grivna per square meter, we understand that the minimum for 1 square meter is 100 grivna. So the minimum will be 700 million a year, which means that they suggest to leave in shadow about 700 million. Then the rent payment of the leases of land plots, that had to be the main source of revenues to the budget. But now, analyzing all the statistical data for the 4 years, we believe that 1.3 billion a year has never been achieved during the previous years. Why this was happening, and we mentioned that before, that the main problem is most part of the land is in shadow. It's not registered. There are no agreements on lease, and people do not pay very often. The next one. This year, according to the land codes, the normative assessment is increased. They were expecting 50-70 billion a year. Because of that, that was logical, because this normative assessment in Kyiv was lower than in Lviv. But we understand what's the difference of price between Kyiv and Lviv. But and that was the initiative of the Land Commission of the City Council. They made the decision to postpone this new assessment to the second half of the year. We're talking about losses of hundreds of millions of hryvnias to the budget, just because such tax holidays are provided to developers, to owners of land plots, and so on. Even with that situation, the draft budget has 1.5 billion hryvnias as forecast of revenues. Even if that evaluation would grow, the minimum revenues would be 1.9 billion. But about 60% of agreements for land, they are lower than 3%. They violate the current tax code. We submitted the proposals on making public the lists of those who do not pay. But these proposals are ignored and are not taken into account. Now the situation is the lease of land, rent of land, which should become one of the biggest sources of income, is the same as it was under predecessors. Now the land tax from legal entities, 750 million, is planned, but it's not mentioned what is the tax base, what this tax covers is not mentioned. Also, the fee for parking the vehicles. It's now we believe that about 90% of the parking places are in shadow. About 300 million hryvnias are in shadow. And
then we're talking about the income revenue of the communal enterprises. This is, of course, a important source for the budget. And one of the messages of Vitaly Klitschko was that we will put the work of communal enterprises to order. And there was an audit, and in December they said that the losses of the budget amounted to over 84 billion hryvnia. But if you really detected those losses, why didn't you provide a plan of measures to take those enterprises out of the crisis? Where's the money? Instead, we have a rather clear message that the that the loss-making work of communal enterprises, including our underground, should be covered by the residents of Kyiv at the expense of raising the cost of the pay for traveling. Why not at the expense of, for instance, rental contracts and all this? Again, this is a huge question. I won't dwell on some aspects because the next speaker will dwell on them, but what the builders, constructors are now, developers are now paying is a rather small sum compared to what they should pay. What we are proposing, We think that in the budget they ignore the significant risks and practices pointed out by public experts, and there is no promised ruin and blow against corruption that the Klitschko team promised. And that's why we have the problem that this budget is, in fact, the budget that repeats the old song of their predecessors. So we call upon all the progressive forces in the Kyiv City Council to oppose the suggested version of the budget, and we think that we should minimize corruption risks and take the billions of money that's in the shadow to the light of day, and to solve the issues not at the expense of citizens, but at the expense of that money hidden in the shadow. So, about the schemes that still continue to exist, Victor Gleba, who is an expert in city construction and an active advocate and helper of local communities opposing illegal construction in Kyiv, who want to protect their right to live in a comfortable city where they would adhere to the demands of the law. Thank you for the patience, dear people, dear colleagues. It is not very comfortable to listen to experts. I'll try to be interesting. At the moment, there is a budget commission working at the Kyiv City State Administration, and we came here because they are trying to confirm the city budget on the next session. Why didn't we go there and came here? Because when we attended the previous sitting of the commission, they have not heeded any of our proposals to take billions of money out of shadow. Well, everything in the budget is taken from the ceiling, out of the blue, and they try to hide the revenues and to redistribute them in secret. You all know the brochure on the budget of Kyiv, and there's another one, another brochure on the protection of natural resources of lands in Kyiv. So how much land is there? How is it protected, and where they take billions of money? My colleague has not said that there are no calculations in the budget. They do not say where they take this $1.5 billion. I'll tell you more. There's a significant difference between the two documents that you see. The program of the use of protected lands says that there's 28,140 hectares of protected lands. However, the general plan, for which the budget paid 16 million, says that there are 14,196 hectares of such land. See, there's a difference between 28 and 14. Even by ear, they do not fit into your brain, and there's no mathematical accuracy there. There's an interesting document for which the budget of this year has to pay, which is the strategy of development of Kyiv until 2025. You know, even the president's administration could not imagine how the strategic plan will develop until 2025, and the Kievans are living according to the strategy up to 2025, while the entire country lives according to the strategy 2020. And this strategy was developed, the 2025 strategy was developed by Renat Akhmetov's foundation. And there they say that there's 17,000 hectares. And we have three figures now. When there's such a difference in figures about the chief factor of production, the land resource, the difference amounts to 14,000 hectares, which equals the territory of one of the districts of the city. So what are we talking about the budget? Is it realistic or pessimistic? I say this is a no-sense budget. And the head of the Department of Land Resources admitted to it when we analyzed this program. Every year they spend up to 30 million hryvnia for this program, but we still don't know how much land there is. We paid 16 million for the general plan, but what do we read there? The territorial development of the city and regulation of land relations is the chief task of the continuation of this work. And the name of this, the title of this document does not correspond to the correspondence with the chief architect of the, doesn't it? Another corruption scheme is the so-called city construction register. There's a citywide program which is called the budget program for the land cadastre, 77 million. In schools and kindergartens, they don't have money to pay for school meals, but we have 77 million to pay for some program. And we didn't see a report on the efficiency on this plan, and we haven't seen the results of budgeting for the, and they impose the continuation of this program. So I want the councillors to listen and to hear us, so that they do not pass the budget in this version, and that they cancel the parts of the budget that continue to finance the so-called general plan, because this is just the legalization of chicanery in the land sphere, and they are just being repainted by the new general plan. You can see on the internet how many scandalous construction sites are being protested against by the activists. For instance, the park on Shmachenko Street, and where they cut the wood under the power of the people's mayor Klitschko, which wasn't done even under the previous authority. We don't have enough time here. Almost 170 problematic things. We have more than once addressed the Commission to Fight Corruption in Kyiv. We have proposed to fight this corruption with legal methods. We said that they should read the law and develop a detailed plans of territory of the 10 districts of Kyiv. Instead of this, they issue money for the development of small plots of land. They manipulate the legal system, And this testifies to the fact that the new team of Klitschko is not going to change all methods. More than this, the team that works with Mr. Klitschko now, they've been sitting in their warm armchairs since 2010 or even earlier. So we don't know how he is going to deliver a blow against corruption with his old team. No questions. Thank you for the information, and tomorrow we will have the opportunity to get the position of the City Council from the Secretary of the City Council.